The award-winning journalist, former senior correspondent at ABC News, now writes a regular column on media and politics. It's the brilliant Jim Avila joining us. Hi, Jim.
Good morning, Mark. How are you? Good morning, Kim.
Well, your boy was out on the stump. He was meandering a little bit. Donald Trump got his bushes confused. He could have easily said his dad got us into the, he could have said, or his brother got us into the, his dad got us into one war, his brother got us into another war. He could have played all those cards, but he didn't. Kind of got confused.
Yeah, and what's interesting, too, is that you see that. He's riffing, his mind is just kind of all over the place. Biden may trip once in a while over a sandbag. And I guess Axios made a big deal today about the fact that the White House has put him in tennis shoes now so that when he's walking around, he has better grip. But they focus on that. They hardly mentioned, there was one line about Trump going on this out of his mind riff. But you don't see Biden doing that kind of thing. Remember when Biden did the State of the Union and he was ad-libbing and he just nailed the Republicans. He's still pretty sharp when it comes to the speaking part. He has a speech defect because he's had stuttering since he was a kid. So once in a while you'll see that happen, but he doesn't very often confuse George Bush with Jeb Bush.
He doesn't make that kind of mistake.
He also said he beat Obama in 2016. That's another thing that Trump said recently. I think the stress may be getting to him, Mark.
I think that, he certainly has a lot of it. He's been rumored to have been asking about exactly, what kind of prison might I go to if things don't work out? Could I be at a minimum security prison, do you think? So he is, I think that stress that you're talking about actually does roll around. But I want to be fair, fair to the argument, okay, and suggest that Biden doesn't make the kind of mistake that you're talking about. But let's face it, he has amplified his memories about, teaching politics at whatever, University of Pennsylvania, whatever, I forget, at university level. And he's misremembering his past, might be a way to put it.
He embellishes.
Yeah, he embellishes, right. And apparently that's something that he has kind of done through time. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
If you've been a politician as long as he has, you're going to find some stuff. And I don't excuse it. I think that, Biden has had some problems. He's a little touchy-feely, too. He's done that, too. But when you compare him, he's very lucky that Donald Trump is around, because rubbing a woman's back or her hair, while not cool, is not rape, is not sexual assault. So he always has this comparison. Stealing some lines from a poet is not the same as stealing money from people who sign up for your college, your university. He has this comparison that works in his favor.
Yeah, if you're grading on a curve, Trump is bringing the curve down. What is it, Kim?
I just wonder why, when President Biden makes some type of error, everyone's thinking, oh, look, he's old, cognitive impairment, that's dementia, look at that, settling in, right? But when Trump seems to make mental errors like this, not knowing which, Bush he beat, which one got us into war, what have you, where's the calls for, oh, he's too old to run? Oh, why do we have this for Biden, but we don't have this for Trump, when they're both misspeak at sometimes points?
Well, I think we're seeing a lot of it. If you're online, we are seeing some of that, Kim, especially from the Democratic side of Twitter or X or whatever it is now. You're seeing a lot of that. They're playing this clip that Mark played this morning is all over the place in the web. So I think that is happening. Where it's not getting through is, I think that a lot of the mainstream media has just decided to ignore Trump. You don't see Trump on the evening news much anymore. But if Biden trips or something, he's the president, they're going to put that on. Now, I think it'd be fair if they're going to do it. You do see it on MSNBC, but you don't see it on NBC, ABC, and CBS when Donald Trump makes these statements that are all over the internet. So I don't know, if that's we're just going to ignore him and they don't play his speeches. Mostly they just don't play his speeches anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting. He is he's the leading contender for the GOP nomination. By the same token, he's essentially saying the same thing across the spectrum in his stump speeches. It's being pointed out in the chat that there's a false equivalence that we're making. I mean, I leave this to, mine's better than mine as to how equivalent it is. I think there's a lot. Here's Delwood. I think there's a bit of grasping at straws going on here, suggesting Trump's brain and Biden's brain are roughly similar in health. Let me just speak to this. First of all, there's no way to really know, as I say, but I also think that, Trump speaks with a vitality. He speaks with a power that you might confuse as a mental acuity. I mean, I just played you a clip, and if you talk to people who served in the Trump White House, they say he was out of it, misunderstanding things, not really. Even the Cassidy Hutchinson stuff, Jim, suggests that he's wildly impatient with the attention span of a 4-year-old. We knew all of these things. They were coming out in contemporaneously with the time that he was president. So I think it's fair to draw some parallels between the two.
Yeah, I think it is, and I think that in many ways, Donald Trump is worse. When you look at the health, he's 3 years younger than Joe Biden. But in any race, in anything except driving a golf cart, I put my money on Biden as far as health is concerned. You see Joe Biden riding these bikes. He runs places. He's been pretty good health. Now, look, I don't defend the fact that he's old and that it's a risk. I think that it is. And frankly, I have said on this show and other places that I wish that he would take a victory lap here at the end of the year and get on Mount Rushmore and take his bow for being the restorative president that he's been, that brought us back to normal, and let younger people run the government. I say that about McConnell too. I think he ought to be out. And Trump should not run. He's too old and too crazy, first of all, but he also has signs of degeneration. And he's at risk of dying at any moment, Donald Trump. He's way overweight. He's not 215 and 6'4". He's that's baloney. And Dianne Feinstein ought to be, all of those folks, they're not capable of the job now. Biden still is capable of the job. I worry that over the next 5 years, which would be the end of the next term, we might see some more indication that he has some trouble, and he would be a liability. And I worry about that, and I worry about him dying. In office.
I have two thoughts about the Democratic Party and in this context, and then I want to move on to Rupert Murdoch. One is that this is what the Democrats do. They pull their guys out of the game because they feel that, that guy's either he's corrupt, or, and I say he/she, because there certainly is, there have been allegations of sort of insider trading type things through the decades with various legislators of both male and female. Anyway, didn't mean to get too caught up on that, but I don't mean to say it's just guys. But pull our players out of the game, I think Democrats tend to do, prematurely. They don't stand by them the way they lock into position as the GOP does. Now, you may feel like, well, that's a virtue of the Democrats. They don't just support their party regardless of what facts. There is a ruthlessness to politics now, and I don't know, how to beat back that ruthlessness, but I would say that the Democrats need a plan, and probably the easiest plan is the power of incumbency with Biden. So even as, again, this is just objectively speaking, I don't know who is. It's getting late in the game, right, Jim, to change horses?
It is. I think end of the year, beginning of next year, it's too late. And once the primaries start, the primaries start in February and March. I think that's we're starting to get too late. But you said something there that I really want to hone in on a little bit. It is a virtue what the Democrats do. Right now, under about Senator Menendez, there are 12 members of the House and Senate who Democrats who have come out and called on him to resign. That's a virtue. The Republicans would never do that and have not done that. George Santos is still sitting in the House, a proven liar, negotiating allegedly for a deal with the government right now to get off the charges. The Republicans refuse to get rid of him. It's a big risk to get rid of Menendez because that's a state, that's a kind of a purple state in New Jersey, and well, the governor will get to a point, I believe, right away. Eventually, the election's coming up pretty soon. The Democrats could lose that seat. So, there are problems with this, but they are standing up and saying, look, this is ridiculous. This guy is a crook or really accused of being a crook and some serious charges, and he ought to go. That's a virtue. The Republicans never do that. They've got Donald Trump, the front runner by a large margin, with 91 different crimes charged in 4 different places. It makes no sense, and the Republicans ought to be ashamed.
Jim, does the argument of everybody's innocent until proven guilty, I mean, you always hear that, you'll hear that in an instant. It's like a reflexive remark on the part of the GOP, because so many of their leading figures, as you've just suggested, have been embattled in legal matters one way or the other. Well, he's innocent until proven guilty, due process, blah, blah, blah. You don't hear that much from the Democrats about Menendez. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think because of the evidence is so overwhelming. When the U.S. attorney put that news conference out with the gold bars and the cash, and I know you've talked about this, that's pretty hard to defend. And his excuse for it was also lame, that because he was in Cuba and his family had stuff taken away, that he doesn't believe in banks, although he sits on the House Banking Committee, by the way. So, none of that makes any sense.
Terrific.
So,
yes, right.
The Democrats, they look, all politicians, you have to view them with suspicion, okay? But I have to say that, Al Franken's not in the Senate anymore. Al Franken posted some pictures of some joke pictures on the plane, which were in bad taste, and the Democrats forced him out. He left. Bobart manhandling a guy in the theater. There hasn't even been a censure, by anybody in the in the Republican Party. It's 2 different standards. They have Fox News backing them up in that echo chamber, and they never see much of the stuff that's going on with the Republican Party. They just I don't even think. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just you mentioned Fox News. I want to get to your column, which I thought was so great. It's an indictment, essentially, as Rupert Murdoch steps back from Fox. It's an indictment of his legacy, and you state it boldly. I wonder if you can just summarize it for us here.
Well, it was bothering me, and of course, his resignation happened last week, and it was bothering me that right away, everybody was stepping up, all these media critics, and saying what a transformative figure he was, and how he, changed American media and American politics, and he did, for the worse. I guess I go back to, the media has gotten us through, mainstream media has gotten us through some pretty big crises in this country. During the Vietnam War, it was the American news media with the Pentagon Papers, Walter Cronkite going to Vietnam, that showed the American people that the Pentagon was lying. We were not winning that war, we were losing it, and there was no plan really to win it. And so that eased us out of the war, kept us out of there was huge crisis going on in this country at that point, as far as people being, college students being killed at Kent State, all kinds of things that are happening. The media got us through that because it reported the facts and not opinion. The civil rights in the 60s, the news media played a huge role in bringing us through the civil rights issues. The Watergate, the media brought us through all these crises because there wasn't this compartmentalization of Republicans on one side, Democrats on the other, getting all their false narratives into into their echo chamber. But what Murdoch did was he invented Fox News with Roger Ailes, who was a Nixon propagandist, and they decided that they were going to create this news channel, quote unquote, that would improve, would give conservatives an unfiltered voice, and that's what they did. So what happened? MSNBC. When I was at NBC, which is right up here, at the time, when they started MSNBC, it started as kind of a, after we did our piece for Tom Brokaw, we'd do a piece for Brian Williams on MSNBC. It was sort of just a cable version of NBC News. Well, they saw what Fox did, and Fox began to dominate the ratings, and they decided we've got to have a point of view, and we've got to try to capture an audience that is liberal. And so they did. So now we have, and CNN during the Trump years started doing that too, because Trump was lying. So I don't fault CNN as much. I think CNN, it was more of an issue of they were going to stand up for democracy, in my opinion. I know a lot of people don't believe that, but I think that's what they did. But at any rate, there was a lot of people now who just tune in to their channel and they see nothing else. So what's happened? The Australian Prime Minister, where Rupert Murdoch is, of course, from Australia, the former Prime Minister said, when he heard of the resignation, wrote that Rupert Murdoch's biggest thing was he caused the biggest division in the United States since the Civil War. And I think that's what's happened. I think that is his legacy. He has split this country into and put us in a place where we can't agree on anything. And it's that's his legacy, and he shouldn't be acclaimed for that. He should be damned for that.
It's interesting. You're making a really interesting point, which is, I think, lost in a lot of this. And it's essentially, it's not just what he did with Fox News Channel and how effective and a propaganda instrument that became. I mean, so powerful. But it's how it forced the rest of media to dramatically and seismically change. I think that I have not heard from many people. So the toxic brew of Fox News Channel spilled over into the rest of this media environment, and that's what we have now.
Yes, especially on cable. And the thing about the cable things, is that not that many watch, believe it or not. The highest audience that Fox gets right now is 3 million people. Okay, and that's on their primetime lineup. The highest that MSNBC gets is about 2.5 million with Rachel Maddow on Monday nights. Every night, my former colleagues at NBC and ABC get 5 to 6 million. So and altogether, those three major networks together get about 10 million viewers. That's a lot more than is on cable. And there's still no commentary on world news, CBS News, or NBC News. It's straight news. Now, that's still there. But what happens is, on cable, they take these clips, and you get people like Jim Jordan who say things just so that it will be played on Fox News, put on a clip, and then it goes viral all over the internet. That's the effect that Rupert Murdoch has had. Even though their audience is not huge, the replay of what they have is very big. And they have that little segment locked down. It's not broadcasting anymore. It's narrowcasting. It's narrowcasting to their audience. That's the big change. And he's done it, to the detriment of this country. I mean, I go through in this column the three big things that he did. He started way before Trump. He started with Obama. He was the one who amplified the crazy Joe Arpaio in Arizona, who was saying that Obama was not born in the United States, and went on this big witch hunt for his birth certificate, and Obama finally had to produce it. But Murdoch and his folks did all that, Then they help Trump get elected. Then they keep him in office, and then they try to keep him in office after he loses the election. Of course, the Dominion lawsuit that shows that they were lying. All those emails show that they were lying. And then, perhaps the worst part is COVID. The COVID-19 misinformation killed people, and surprisingly, it killed their people. It killed the Fox News people. A study from Yale University showed that 43% after the vaccines came out, okay, Democrats were taking the vaccine almost universally. Republicans were not, and Fox News was responsible for that, partially responsible, that majorly responsible for that, along with Donald Trump. And after the vaccines came out, the Democratic numbers went down in Democratic states of people dying of COVID. And in the Republican states like Ohio and Florida, it went up 43%. 43% more people died from COVID because of disinformation put on Fox News. That, to me, is a crime. And we've talked about a little bit about this before. I don't know if it's possible. I'm not a lawyer. I played one on TV before, but I'm not a lawyer. And it seems to me there might be a case of linking your dad's death to false information on Fox News. If you prove that he stopped taking or didn't take the vaccine because he saw it on Fox News and then he died. That's the same thing as Dominion. And I wish somebody would take them to court on that. That's
maybe a big lift, but the way you recount it is exactly what happened. And the statistics are pretty damning. A lot of people who watch Fox left for Newsmax and OAN because Fox is getting, quote, too liberal for them, says Eric. Yeah, it's interesting that, and we have to wrap up, but it's interesting that there's a lot of it's too liberal for me going on in America right now. The extreme Christian right is rejecting some mainstream teachings of Jesus and some mainstream church teachings because the religion that they now espouse, essentially, is way more conservative than some of those tenets that they found in the teachings of Jesus. This is a summary, of course, of a lot of detailed stuff, but it is true that we become this more extreme society in many ways, even including Christianity, which is supposed to have this soft spot for humanity.
There are some people, to your chat response, I think that, yes, Newsmax did, especially right after Tucker Carlson was fired, they got a bump, and OAN got a little bump, but their audience is so small that it was a relatively small bump. And what was interesting is that Fox, you can tell that it's immoral and unethical, okay? Because right around during the Dominion thing, all those emails came out showing that how much Murdoch hated Trump, Carlson hated Trump, but as soon as they saw their numbers going down, they jumped right back on the Trump train. They had that big lunch out at his Bedminster in his golf course, and they convinced him to come on, again. So I think, that while there's been some erosion, it's still not total, and it's still not they're still the biggest force.
The column is great, and it really takes down Murdoch because he was a transformational figure, as you say, but all the transformation was massively destructive. I mean, and so, the word transformational, it does tend to somehow recast this very huge profile in some complex way. Your point is, hey man, he's transformational, and it was pure toxicity, and it seismically changed American media. I love this column, What Rupert Murdoch Got Wrong at Fox News. Tony, will you put a link in the chat, please, so people can find it? Yeah. So
thanks, Tony.
We'll have a few more clicks for you. Yeah. Thank you, Tony. And thank you, Jim Avila. Look forward to Friday. Well. And what's that? Oh, in the description
as well. And I'll put a link in the chat right now for it.
It'll be a link in the chat, link in the description. That's our maximum linkage, Jim. So there you go.
Much appreciated. I get a lot
Yeah.
of comments from your listeners and viewers. It's
Yeah,
very nice.
it's really cool to have you in the mix regularly. So we'll look forward to talking to you Friday. Thanks, Jim Avila.
Okay.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.